Hey everybody, it's JesseJ, and today I'm going to be going over this Legions of Will deck that I created called Turbo Timmys. Now this is my own brew, and it's a brand new deck, and probably the craziest deck that I've created so far. Legions of Will is an independent card game that I've actually had the pleasure of doing some illustration for, and as far as the game mechanic is concerned, that this deck really abuses is the fact that in Legions of Will, every card is a cantrip. So every time you play a card, you instantly refill your hand back up to your maximum hand size. This deck really takes advantage of it. Its goal, and especially once I saw that in Legions of Will, everything would draw you a card, my goal was how do I play my whole hand? Or my whole deck really in 1 or 2 turns, and that's what this deck does. So I'm just going to dive into it. I have all the cards separated in front of me. Now Legions of Will, you have a 40 card deck, but I have all the cards separated in front of me to kind of highlight each section of what they're there for and what their primary function is. First, we're going to start off with the ever important bases. So the most important thing about Legions of Will is your source of resource is your base, and then you start with one of them face up, and as you progress in the game, you can see on the backs of these cards they have numbers, and as you get enough resource to activate your other bases, you flip them face up, and then at the beginning of your turn you have a resource phase where you gain resource based on their resource all the way at the right. But the base that you start with in play for this deck is the Abyss. Now the Abyss has a unique ability. It gives you 3 resource and has 6 capacity and 3 defense. The capacity is how many permanents you can put onto this base. But its special ability is unit cards you play cost 1 less to station in this base, but if a unit would leave this base, expel it instead. So it's kind of like a good and a bad ability, because usually in Legions of Will, you're going to be doing a lot of attacking, a lot of blocking, so you're just expelling your units rather than putting them in your graveyard. And our second base here, City of Amethyst, just has the ability all permanents cost 1 less to attach to this base. Now that's kind of a similar ability. This one just speaks for units. This one is any permanent, upgrades, all sorts of things. But basically, because this one's legendary, we have to start with the Abyss in order for this deck to function. The last base is kind of a throwaway, just this Coral Reef. It could be, I believe there's a card called Shattered Realm. It will probably be the first upgrade that I'd suggest in this deck, but it's just not something that I have in my cards. So this deck is about 99.8% done. There's 2 cards I'd like to upgrade. I think the Coral Reef in reality I'd like to upgrade to a card called Shattered Realm, which would copy the Abyss, so that I'd have a second copy of the Abyss late game. But other than that, the deck functions really well already. There are just 2 minor tweaks, and that's the first one, and when the other one comes up, I'll talk about it later in the video too. But let's move on from the bases, and these 2 are functionally the same. This one just units will cost 1 less. This one is, permanents cost 1 less, but it's going to be units as well, because mainly we're playing a ton of cheap units. Okay, so we're going to move on from our bases and move on to the first big chunk here, which is our Timmys. This is what gives my deck the name Turbo Timmys, because what we're playing here is we have 4 Gas Creepers, we have 4 Seikonas, the Oracle, we have 2 Beetle Hordes, we have 3 Septuorian Initiates, and 4 Demon Imps. Now, what these cards do, and I'm sure you've guessed already, is they're all cost of 1. So because they all cost 1 resource, they actually are free to put on the Abyss. And functionally, what happens in the deck is you will get tons of these 1-drops. And the best 1-drop is obviously Seikona because it'll draw you an extra card when it comes in because it increases the hand size. So instead of your hand size being 2, it'll increase it to 3 and then 4 and then up by 4, so eventually 6, as long as you can kind of power them all out. Which draws you a ton extra cards and has really smoothed over the deck. Before the Seikonas came in, it did feel a little clunkier and you were kind of like top decking each time. Now Seikona comes down, you draw 2 cards, it lets you breathe a little bit more. But yeah, every time you play one of these 1-drops and you play it onto the Abyss, it's free. And you can do that up to 6 times. So that's essentially you're playing 6, drawing 6, which is amazing. We're going to move on to our second stack because these are also our Timmys, but these are some of the more important Timmys as well. Because early game, you're going to get up to that 6 very, very quickly. But these Timmys, my 4 copies of Cursed Relic, and the even more important 4 Fiendish Defenders are 0-drops and 1-drops. Now the Cursed Relics, basically, they're going to come down for free, and early game, they're going to usually cost 1 resource and exile themselves or expel themselves from the Abyss. So they're just going to remove themselves from the game. But what that does for that 1 cost of resource is it clears up more space on the Abyss for more units to come down. The same thing, and the reason that the Fiendish Defender is even a little better in this aspect is because it comes down for free being a 1 cost, but it sacrifices target base's defense is equal to this unit's power until end of turn, so it can just sacrifice itself for free to boost up the base or just make it a 3 power again, but or a 3 defense again rather. But it more importantly will just self clear itself so that I can power down some more Timmys, draw some more cards, and keep the cycle going. This is like the real star of the deck though. This next pile. This is Harvest Nature. Now it's a 1 cost spell, 1 cost action card, but you just gain 1 resource for each unit you control, which is amazing because say you're at your 6 capacity here, usually you'll still have up to 3 resource, but as long as you're playing the deck through and you had to activate a couple Cursed Relics just to get them out of there, anything like that, you might be down. As long as you just stay down and don't go any past 1, you can save 1 for this Harvest Nature and refill your resource. You usually refill you'll go up to 6 or so, and if you go up to 6, then you can start to activate your secondary base, which is your city of Amethyst. And when you activate that, now you have a whole nother base to throw down more Timmys, draw more cards. This one has a 5 capacity, and once again, every Timmy is going to be reduced by 1. So once again, you're drawing cards, you're throwing a bunch down. The next pile, but the Harvest Nature cannot be overstated, like how good it is. This deck is built around this card. It is very powerful, and it is the fuel. The next stack is basically throw away just free spells that draw you cards. Now the best one, of course, being Twilight Blossom, but it's a legendary action, so it is limited to 1. But this is just 0 cost, gain 3 resource, and because everything is a cantrip, it draws you a card as well. So excellent card, but it is just kind of like a throwaway. Maybe get a little bit extra resource. You can power out some more of your Harvest Natures, or throw a couple other Timmys, or use your Cursed Relics, things like that. So great card, definitely the best in this section. But once again, it is really just like a redraw. The same with this. This is a Crysotite Monument, and the Crysotite Monument is mainly a redraw because you really do want to either win on your first turn or second turn. So this card can come into play where you're on your second turn, and you know, it's giving you a little extra resource, but it also does, you know, pay for itself capacity wise, so it'll give you a little extra resource on your turn, and you know, but mostly it's a 0 drop, draws you an extra card. And then of course 4 copies of Raise the Dead. Now Raise the Dead is a great card, but it is, once again, it has an action redeem 0, you discard it, draw a card. Now late in the game, choose target unit in a graveyard, to target unit card in a graveyard, pay the resource cost of that card and put it into a base. That will probably never come up. Most of the time it is just a free draw. I don't know, now that this deck is out, and maybe people will brew against it and try to create some sort of counter for it, so maybe these games will be longer than 1 or 2 turns. But if that does happen, then maybe Raise the Dead will have a little bit more function late game. But as of right now, you know, maybe at the most, maybe you grab a Seikona or something if somebody's lucky enough to like be able to snipe it on their first turn. But who knows? Um, the next stack of cards is just kind of your control elements. Deluge, which is an amazing card, which target base produces 0 resource this turn, is basically, you know, you want to draw into it if you go first, because you can't attack on your first turn, and this deck does want to attack. Your Timmys are your fighting force, and they're your fuel source, and you power them out, and you turbo them out, turbo Timmys, but your fighting force as well, you know, and they're little guys, but they will become huge with our final cards here. Deluge is your control element. You want to draw into it so that you can basically, you know, drain your opponent's first base's resource and just like get them to skip their turn. The next card in here, which also basically just gives you an extra turn. Now, it doesn't help if you go first, because your opponent does have to get a turn before you can attack. However, Sands of Eternity. Take an extra turn after this one and expel this card from the game. Most of the time, especially if you go second, it's excellent. It's backbreaking. You'll probably have, you know, 1 or 2 bases activated, so you go into a new turn with like 7 new resource. It's really hard to lose from that position. But this is the other card that may be a swap. I might trade it for, and another upgrade that I'm considering is trading it for a card called Vitality Altar. It's an upgrade that costs 4, but it allows you to basically sacrifice your units for 2 additional resource, which would be another amazing engine for the deck. So that is a maybe upgrade. I would have to run it with that card and really see like if this card is better, if that card is better. But as of right now, my 4-drop slot here is this Sands of Eternity, which has been pretty great. I mean, it really does like another thing, like if you go to your second turn and then you go into this third turn and then you're really prepped, you're in a better position resource wise, and it really does, like as of right now, feel pretty smooth as well. And then the last card in this slot, which is, you know, our control slot, is Severance. And this is just a one of in the deck. And really it has, you know, one major function. And I'll kind of talk about it going in, and we'll segue in with the next section here and last section of the deck. But Severance, it is a good card. You know, you don't really want to draw it too often. It can be like a little bit of a dead card in your hand most of the time because you want to win on turn 1 or 2. But it can really help. You know, it has a couple functions in the deck that are really thought out carefully, and I'll go in. It's a perfect segue into our last section here. And that is the meat of our deck, which are just these 2 cards. Absorb, which is a common card, and Transformation, which is a legendary card. Now, Absorb has the ability, look at the top card of target player's deck. You may put that card on the bottom of that player's deck. Absorb deals 3 damage to target unit that player controls. You may return target card named Transformation from your graveyard to your hand. and that is excellent. You don't want to play this card until, or you do want to play this card uh, because it is going to enable transformation, and you'll see that in a second. So essentially, you are already in a good position. You've played most of your deck, and now you're ready to boost up your Timmys. You're ready to go in for the kill. You're able to attack, and this will be the turn that you do that. But basically, absorb. Once again, you're going to look at target player's deck. It doesn't really matter what they're playing on top of their deck. Maybe it could a little bit, but really at this point, like, you're just going to throw it to the bottom or leave it on top. Doesn't really matter. And then what you're going to do is you are going to throw this into the graveyard, and then it enables transformation, which is a legendary action, and it has this card cost 0 to play as long as you played a card named Absorb or Relinquish this turn. And usually it costs 9, which is really a high price tag, but as long as you played the Absorb card, it is free. And so this card costs 0 to play as long as you played a card named Absorb or Relinquish, which we're playing Absorb. And what it has is shuffle up to 3 cards from your graveyard into your deck. Then draw 3 cards. Units you control gain -3 will and +3 power until your next turn. Now, most of our Timmys have really low will already, except for like the Septuorian Initiate, which has a pretty high will. But essentially, the way that will works in Legions of Will, is that they will have a first number, which is their will, and then second number, which is their power. And the way that will works is when your units move to attack, you have to roll a d12 and you have to get higher than the willpower in order to attack. So if your unit has 7 will, like one of my units has, and I think Seikona has about 6, so Septuorian Initiate has 7, and the Seikonas also have 7. So basically, if you roll less than a 7, your units just aren't attacking. Now, transformation, it gives them -3 will. So now those 7s go down to 4, which is, gives you, now you can roll a 5 all the way through 12 and still be able to attack, which really does help. And then they get +3 power. So now these, most of them, are just little 1s. The Septuorian Initiate is a 3. The Seikona is a 2. They're going to get boosted up. So now all these little 1 attackers are now going to be 4s, which is significantly better. But it gets even better because by the time you play these cards, you're going to have probably 0 cards in your deck, right? So you are going to be powering out these Timmys. You're going to be throwing down your 0-cost spells, your Harvest Natures. You're going to be gaining so much resource that you don't know what to do with. And, at this point, you'll probably have all 3 bases activated. You're going to be throwing down Timmys. You're going to be probably at full capacity on all your bases. It's going to be turn 1 or turn 2 once again. Like, it's going to be so crazy. It happens so quickly. Every time I test run this deck, it is really a monster. But at this point in the game, when you do activate these cards, you will have 0 cards in your deck. And what you're usually going to put back, because you're going to absorb, then you're going to transformation. Now, transformation is going to draw you those 3 cards. So what you're going to put back is usually an absorb, a harvest nature, and your severance. And this is where this segues into it, right? Because then you're going to get these 3 cards back. So then once again, what you can do is you can go to play your harvest nature to refill your resource, and then you can play your absorb. And your absorb is going to get your transformation back, and when it gets your transformation back, you can put the harvest nature and the absorb back into your deck. Now, what somebody might do, if they do have something what they can do is they can try to, counter your transformation, counter your absorb, your harvest nature. It probably, like, your opponent probably won't have anything just because of the fact of how quickly you're doing all this. But the Severance does come into play here because it is a great counter spell. Target card does not resolve, its owner gains 3 resource. So that actually has 2 functions in this deck. One being that it will counter something that is being played against you. Now, the biggest cards that kind of fight against this deck, I would say, would have to be like Divine Vengeance. And Divine Vengeance is basically if you have 0 resource, you can play it for free and destroy all attacking units, which would be devastating for this deck, but you're already set up because you have this Severance. Now, what Severance does is it will make sure that that Divine Vengeance does not resolve, and then secondary, it's going to give your opponent 3 resource so they won't be able to activate and play another Divine Vengeance because now they will have 3 resource. Now that 3 resources, they do have something that, prevents all damage, active truce or something like that, not a big deal because next turn you're just going to do the exact same thing. And if that does happen, you can also deluge them again. You can use your transformation, your absorb, grab another grab Deluge at this point from your graveyard, or if you have it in your hands, and just rinse and repeat because it doesn't end in that way. You'll always be able to get back your transformation. You'll always be able to get it back with this absorb because you have no cards. You do not lose in Legions of Will for having 0 cards in your deck either. So you can just do this forever, and you'll just end the game. But that's how Turbo Timmys works. I hope that it was kind of eye-opening. And the deck itself is just, a 10 out of 10. Like I said, there could be 2 additions that would make it even a little bit better and more efficient. But as of right now, I'm really happy with the deck, and I appreciate you checking it out. Follow me, Drawings and Dreadnoughts on YouTube, and have a great day. Thank you.